The prevailing analysis is strategically illiterate. The narrative is focused on missile trajectories, kinetic exchanges, and launch warnings. This is a calculated diversion. The kinetic cost of a direct peer-to-peer conflict is prohibitive. The real vector is silent. Analysts at RUSI and CSIS have mapped the blueprint. While media cycles fixate on low-cost kinetic platforms, like the novel Shahed drone tactics reported from the European theater, the primary risk is asymmetric and non-kinetic. The objective is not to defeat the U.S. military. The objective is to paralyze the U.S. Treasury. The attack surface is the global financial nervous system, the 550,000 miles of subsea cabling that transmit over 95% of all transcontinental data, including trillions in daily financial transactions. A simultaneous attack on this infrastructure and the satellite networks that serve as its backup induces systemic paralysis. This protocol creates the blind Leviathan. The U.S. Carrier Strike Group is the most powerful kinetic asset in history. But without satellite data, it is blind. Without subsea cable connectivity, the Federal Reserve cannot clear transactions. It becomes a giant without senses, a liability trapped in a solvency crisis. The pivot to this new protocol of warfare is not a choice. It is a mathematical necessity. Any direct, conventional kinetic engagement with the United States is a calculated loss for any near-peer adversary. The resource gap is not a challenge. It is an absolute firewall. Therefore, the strategic calculus shifts. If you cannot win a war of materiel, you must instigate a war of solvency. The objective is no longer to destroy armies, but to bankrupt the treasury that funds them. This is the core motive: to reframe war as a balance sheet liability. CSIS analysis confirms that for states like Russia, protracted, unpopular conflicts represent an existential domestic liability, draining political capital and economic reserves. Having experienced this vulnerability firsthand, their strategic doctrine has evolved. The new target is the opponent's financial stability. This weakness, the inability to compete symmetrically, forces a pivot. The adoption of new Shahed drone attack tactics, as documented by military observers, is the blueprint for this strategy. These are not merely weapons. They are instruments of economic leverage. They are low-cost, high-impact assets designed to provoke a disproportionately expensive kinetic response from the defender. The entire vector is engineered to create a solvency crisis. A single drone, costing less than a new car, can necessitate a multi-million-dollar interceptor missile. It can halt shipping in a strategic choke point, imposing billions in costs on global commerce and forcing the U.S. Navy to deploy assets at a ruinous operational tempo. The math is simple and brutal. They weaponize our liabilities against us, turning the defense of the petrodollar system into an economic self-immolation. This is why Russia publicly urges for talks and warns against force, as reported by Al Arabiya. It is not a gesture of peace. It is a strategic maneuver to frame the U.S. as the escalator. Every kinetic action the U.S. takes to defend its interests, as outlined in potential strike scenarios by the BBC, validates the adversary's model. They have created an impossible dilemma: escalate and accelerate your own bankruptcy, or stand down and allow your global economic system to erode. This is the solvency trap. The core mechanism driving this crisis is a protocol of economic exhaustion. The math doesn't lie. According to analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, the kinetic cost imbalance is the primary accelerant. A modern main battle tank is a capital asset valued at over $5 million. The asymmetric counter, a commercially derived FPV drone, can be deployed for under $500. This is not a battle. It is an arbitrage on violence. This is what strategists refer to as the democratization of violence. State-level kinetic power is no longer the exclusive domain of superpowers. Adversaries can now weaponize off-the-shelf technology to inflict strategic, systemic liabilities at a near-zero marginal cost. They are not trying to win a tank-on-tank engagement. They are vectoring to bankrupt the system that deploys the tank. Every drone launched, whether it hits or is intercepted, represents a win for the attacker. A multi-million-dollar interceptor missile used to destroy a $500 drone is a catastrophic economic loss. The defender is forced into a launch-on-warning posture that drains inventory and liquidity, accelerating the timeline not toward a military victory, but a national solvency crisis. The map you are shown is a lie. The firewalls of conflict are not national borders, they are systemic. What analysts are mislabeling as regional instability, warnings about South Africa, logistical paralysis in Canada, are not the disease. They are the gray zone, proxy laboratories for a new protocol of economic warfare. In these controlled environments, adversaries are running simulations with live assets. They are not testing armies. They are testing supply chain elasticity and capital flight thresholds. The objective is to gather data. A drone strike on a port is not measured in kinetic damage, but in basis points on insurance premiums and days of shipping delays. It is economic reconnaissance. This protocol refines the cost curve of asymmetric conflict. According to reports from CSIS, the new swarm tactics being adopted for platforms like the Shahed drone are designed for maximum economic disruption at minimum cost. The goal is to perfect a blueprint, how to force a Western government to spend billions to defend an asset that was targeted for thousands. This staging phase is critical. While Russia publicly urges talks to de-escalate tensions around Iran, its strategists are studying the gray zone data. They are mapping the financial blast radius of kinetic events. The pressure on the petrodollar system is not a theoretical risk. It is a calculated vector being calibrated in these laboratories. The final target is not a territory, but your solvency. The nuclear deterrent is not a weapon. It is a protocol, a piece of software. CSIS analysis confirms this protocol is launch on warning. It is an automated response system designed for a world that no longer exists. The logic is simple. If early warning radar detects an incoming missile volley, you launch your own assets before they are destroyed on the ground. The decision window is not hours, it is minutes. This entire systemic architecture has one fatal dependency: the integrity of the data. Adversaries now understand this. The new vector of attack is not the missile silo, it is the radar network. This is the fog of digital war. A low-cost, coordinated kinetic strike leveraging drone swarm tactics, as detailed in Russian military doctrine, can create the initial physical alert. Simultaneously, a targeted cyber attack blinds the verification systems. The radar goes dark. The satellites report nothing. The commander is now operating without data, armed only with a protocol. The dilemma becomes absolute. Option A: do not launch, and bet the nation's existence that the alert is a ghost. If you are wrong, you have no assets left to retaliate. You cease to exist. Option B: follow the protocol. Launch based on the last known data point, an inbound attack, and the current signal loss, which is interpreted as confirmation of a successful first strike. Fear forces the launch. The adversary does not need to land a single nuclear warhead. They only need to force the launch protocol to activate. The kinetic cost of the response, whether against a real or phantom enemy, shatters the global financial system. This is not about winning a war. It is about triggering a solvency crisis. The escalation is a mathematical certainty. engineered by forcing a choice where every outcome is a loss. The coming calibration shot will not be a missile launch. It will be a coordinated, attribution-impossible shutdown of a Tier 1 U.S. maritime gateway, such as the Port of Houston or Long Beach. USI analysts have modeled that new swarm tactics, mirroring those deployed by Russia, are designed for exactly this vector. Overwhelming, localized, unhardened civilian infrastructure. The objective is not kinetic destruction, it is economic paralysis. A limited number of low-cost platforms will neutralize power substations and fiber optic hubs. The resulting cascade failure will be officially indistinguishable from a catastrophic domestic grid failure, making a clear launch-on-warning response politically and legally impossible. This event will serve as a mathematical test of the U.S. response doctrine, which is currently configured for state-on-state conflict. It forces an impossible choice: absorb the multi-billion-dollar sovereign liability and signal systemic weakness to the petrodollar system, or escalate based on ambiguous data, a scenario geopolitical adversaries are actively baiting. Expect a 48 to 72-hour paralysis event within the next 12 months. The vector is calculated. The target is solvency.